We are honored to have with us this year at our convention our Secretary of State, Elaine Marshall. Secretary Marshall, as all of you know, she makes an effort every year to attend Farm Bureau annual meetings, and for that, Elaine Marshall, we are eternally grateful. Elaine Marshall has served as our Secretary of State since 1997. Before that, she served in the North Carolina State Senate. She is a hard and dedicated worker for the people of North Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, Elaine Marshall has a long record of public service. She's not, I can tell you, Elaine Marshall is not just a friend of Farm Bureau, she is among our very best friends. The door to her office is always open to Farm Bureau. I ask you to help me and join me in welcoming a longtime friend of Farm Bureau, our Secretary of State, Elaine Marshall.
Thank you so much, Larry, and good morning, everyone. I'm not only a friend of Farm Bureau, I am a Farm Bureau member of Harnett County, and if I wasn't, my daddy would rise up out of his grave and slap me. So I am a farmer's daughter and a Farm Bureau family to boot. My brother still farms, our family farm. At one time it was 3 generations, but time moves on and things like that happen, but I'm very, very glad that we are a proud Farm Bureau member in another state, but still equally proud. You folks get to see Larry and the staff of Farm Bureau at these meetings. I get to see them also in some other context. And I will tell you, I am the lobbyist regulator for the state of North Carolina. But it gives me an official position, but as an informal position, I see the hard work that your staff does at the General Assembly. They have integrity. When they say something, it is valued. The organization, therefore, has integrity, and Farm Bureau has an extremely important and viable voice. And I also know, I don't get to see it at the federal level, but also know that these same individuals, for the most part, are representing you very well at the federal level. I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to get a chance to see a few more friends as I hang around. I noted from the invitation that this is now the 80th annual convention of the Farm Bureau. Farmers talk a lot about roots. But really, the roots are now a deep and fundamental part of North Carolina itself, as is agriculture. People in urban parts of the state may not realize this, but we are still a farming state. I'm incredibly grateful for that. Your poster says the truth about agriculture, 98% of all farms are family farms. The truth is that 98% of the people who make the laws in this state, and arguably at the federal level, were never raised on a farm, never had grandparents on a farm, and don't really understand the way of life and how important some of the elements that government can either help or hinder make a big difference in farming. So we need to be very, very vocal about the kind of things we want to see, who we are, and again, how important it is. Following Sue Langdon, congratulations, Sue. I'm very sorry that the term sweet potato queen has been co-opted for a book, and it doesn't necessarily have the best image for it. But Sue, you would be our sweet potato queen, setting a good example. For those of you who don't know, you've got to read. No, you don't have to read some of those books. They're terrible. But we have indeed been a top producer of sweet potatoes in the United States for a while. In 2014, we became the nation's biggest producer, to the point that a majority of all of the sweet potatoes grown in the U.S. come from North Carolina, 53% of the national crop. And I remind all my friends when they sit down for Thanksgiving or sit down for Christmas, you can just go across the table and say, this came from North Carolina, this came from North Carolina, this came from North Carolina. We grow this here. Makes me very, very proud. I go into restaurants and I say, do you know where all your sweet potatoes came from? And well, they don't know. They came out of a box. Well, they were grown right here in North Carolina. We're the leading producer. And they give me that aha moment, like, how can this be? And then when I tell them it's really only a small number of counties that really are the major producers, they again look at me like I'm crazy. I'm trying to spread the story about North Carolina farmers, their productivity, and make people realize that this is very vital to their life. So we're also the second largest producer of turkeys. I understand now that there are about 3 turkeys in the state for each person. I think there's some double counting going on because I know some folks that fit both categories, but anyway. I think most of us do know a few turkeys, but anyway. Seriously, going back to your 80th anniversary, 80 years ago, life was extremely hard in North Carolina. I've talked with many folks who lived through the 1930s, the Great Depression, and one thing almost all of them said, and still say today, when they talk about how hard it was, and they say, but we had food on the table, so we got by. That's right, food on the table. It can be plain and simple. It can be homegrown and not even fancy. But at the end of the day, if you have food on the table, you're going to be okay. And it's true if you're a little kid or a senior citizen. Some of you may not know this, but as Secretary of State, I'm the top charities regulator in North Carolina. I license the fundraisers, keep the records of the donations, and investigate when there appears to be some charity scam going on. Every year, I release a giant report of the state of charity in North Carolina. And we just did it last month, a few days before Thanksgiving. If you're interested in it, you can go to our website, sosnc.com, if you want to read more or if you want to check out certain charities. But I tell you this because each year when we do this, we release it at some place that the press might be interested in coming to, a location of one of our good guy charities, so a charity that uses their donations wisely to help a lot of people and make sure that a large percent of the dollars that go to them get invested in the charity and not in administrative expenses such as salaries or buildings. So this year we turned the media spotlight on a very worthy cause, something you're all familiar with, I'm sure, Meals on Wheels. And they actually have a dining room for seniors in a variety of places in Wake County. Meals on Wheels is a great organization. They have a crystal clear mission to give people, mostly older folks, a good, nutritious hot lunch and a smile every day. That's pretty simple, but it's pretty powerful. They do that hundreds of thousands of times a year across North Carolina. A hot meal and a little conversation, because they know that's how folks who are unable to cook for themselves or go to restaurants will make it safely from day to day. In fact, we often release our report at a food bank or a rescue shelter or something similar. Every year I'm reminded how much of the food they serve comes straight from the fields of North Carolina and North Carolina farms. I see all the potatoes and the vegetables and the chickens and turkeys being prepped, and very often local food is donated to those kitchens. And I always say, thank goodness North Carolina is such a great agriculture state. We make enough to sell and to support our farm families and communities, and we make enough to share with those in need. So thank you, each and every one of you, for the role you play in making that happen. If you're a farmer, bless you. I know from growing up on my family farm just how tough that life is, but as the old Christmas movie says, it's a wonderful life growing up on a farm. Or if you're in agribusiness and participating in moving all of North Carolina's bounty to market, thank you also. We need to keep pushing our products out to the greater markets. We need to make sure that we're getting them in the global marketplace more and more as well. Identifying new uses and promoting healthful benefits of them as research permits are going to be essential. Many of you know I try my best to promote North Carolina agricultural goods in the international work I do, since that is associated with my office as well. I'm still doing that, and I hope that by 2016 we'll have some good information about new markets overseas, particularly in Europe. Well, shoot, this past year I even helped promote vodka made from North Carolina sweet potatoes. I don't know how many of you picked up on that, but the Secretary of State of Kentucky made a wager with me during basketball season when when Louisville was playing NC State. And she bet what she said was the finest Kentucky bourbon. Well, I had to come up with something equally spirited, so I wagered some Covington vodka. Unfortunately, State lost the game. Fortunately for me, I got to give, as I was president of the National Secretary of States, and when you have the gavel, you get to do some good things, to give everybody a lesson on NC State research, the development of the Covington vodka, and we actually had a sampling too. So they all had a good flavor of North Carolina farm product at our national convention. The Farm Bureau is strong in supporting the state construction bond, and I want to add my voice for the up-and-coming vote on March 15, 2016. I was here when the governor spoke and Commissioner of Agriculture elaborated a number of things that are going to be important to agriculture in that bond. Without hesitation, I say please vote for it. I support the bond. And a little idea that some of you, it's a primary election in March 15th. I have come across people who are not affiliated with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They register to vote as unaffiliated. We commonly call them independents. And I've run across a lot of people across the years who say, I don't vote in the primary because that's a party activity and I don't really belong to a party. You need to encourage those people, even if they vote for nothing else, to show up and vote for that bond package. It won't make a bit of difference in any of the partisan elections. They don't have to vote in a partisan election. But I would encourage you to get the independents, the unaffiliateds, who usually don't show up at the primary, to come out and have their voice heard about this very, very important bond issue. I hope that as you sit down and enjoy the bounty of what you had for Thanksgiving, and probably will have many, many times during the Christmas season, talk about voting as you get with your families. I know that that's not always a good thing to happen, but you don't have to talk about candidates. Talk about why it's so important to agriculture. This is different. It's a special bond. It's not a political candidate, and a majority of leaders from both parties support it. But a lot of folks, there's not going to be a lot of publicity. The press picks up more on other controversial things, and you'll only hear about it probably during the last week before voting. So please keep your family members informed. March is going to be here before we know it. So it's an extremely short period of time. Don't be very shy about it. Tell folks to vote for the bond issue, especially the plant sciences building and all the other resources. Commissioner Troxler mentioned how we feed the rest of the world, and we frequently think about people in desert places in Africa and the Mideast. But we are seeing water issues in this country that are going to make feeding Americans even more difficult. So it's essential for North Carolina to help feed the rest of America, but for North Carolina to maintain its edge in leading research for the most efficient way to produce crops with limited resources, because that's the future, unfortunately. You all know that from farming, but to use the resources that we have wisely and get the maximum out of them. This new plant science building is specifically geared toward that. So, thanks each and every one of you for coming and participating in this great organization. I often say if it's December and it's Greensboro, it's got to be Farm Bureau. So thank you all very, very much and have a great holiday season.